Good evening. Welcome back to Youth Night Live. We have our newest contestants on our episode of this week, Allie and Jacob McCormick. We're probably going to have some sibling rivalry today. I asked them before we started who was smarter. They both said each other, and I'm talking about themselves. So one thinks they're smarter than the other. I don't actually know. I think this is going to be a good battle, but we'll see. If you were with us last week, Landon just got by Holden in the tiebreaker round in Trivia Addiction, so we have got another game set for this week. Are you guys ready? Yes, sir. Alright, here we go. Question number 1. In what Disney movie does the character Jafar appear? A. Cinderella. B. Lion King. C. Aladdin, or D. Beauty and the Beast. We're trying to find out which Disney movie does this character Jafar appear. I won't lie to you, I don't really watch Disney movies, so I actually don't even know the answer to this question. But I think Allie might get this. You reveal your answers in 3, 2, 1. I got Lion King. I got Aladdin. The answer is Aladdin. Sorry, Jacob. That is incorrect. 1 point to Allie, though. Way to go. That's pretty good.
Lion King.
Sounded like a
Lion King is all animals.
Sounded like an animal.
How does something sound like an animal name? Question number 2. How many people were part of the main cast of Friends? A. 6. B. 8. C. 4. Or D. 5. How many people were part of the main cast of Friends? It was A. 6, B. 8, C. 4, or D. 5. I've only seen like a couple episodes of Friends. I'm not a big Friends guy. If you're a Friends person, maybe. No problem. But stop. Jacob, you're Friends. Sure. Allie said it. Alright, let's see those answers. What do we got? 5, 6. The answer is 6. Allie taking a 2-point lead over Jacob. Allie in the lead here. How are you feeling?
Pretty good.
Jacob, how are you feeling?
Feel great.
It's okay, we got other categories going, so maybe this entertainment one's just not for you. It's okay. Alright, the last question of the entertainment category is this. Which singer pulled all her albums from Spotify in protest of music streaming services? A. Gwen Stefani. B. Demi Lovato. C. Katy Perry. Or D. Taylor Swift. Which singer pulled all her albums from Spotify in protest of music streaming service? You got this one, Jacob, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know female artists.
Is Allie about to speak in the entertainment section?
I don't know this one.
Alright,
I'm
let's do those
giving
answers in
an
3.
educated guess.
Oh, you changing it?
Yes, he.
I think this is a choice. I don't know.
Gwen Stefani, Demi Lovato, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift. Alright, let's see those answers. Gwen Stefani, it was Taylor Swift. You didn't know that?
She copied me.
I
Her
really
music is
didn't.
back. I think it's back on. Well, actually, I don't know if it's on Spotify at all.
I
It's
had
still
written
on
down
Apple
my
Music.
answer first, so there's no way I copied you.
After our first category, Allie is up 2 points to none. Will Jacob make a comeback? We shall find out. Alright, this next category is sports. Moving on to the sports category. Alright, question number 1. How many gold medals did Michael Phelps win in the 2008 Olympics? Was it A, 8, B, 6, C, 4, or D, 12? A8, B6, C4, or D12. Knows it. Allie does not feel confident at all. Let's see those answers. I got 12. I got 4. The answer was 8. Man.
Who watches swimming?
Yeah.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
actually, your mother. We do, but
And actually, the whole nation that year was watching swimming as he was setting a world record for how many gold
I
medals
just
he
didn't
left to
think
get.
8 was possible.
I know, that's how lit it was.
It was like 15 or something.
Next question. Who won the 2007 Super Bowl? Was it A, the Patriots, B, the Seahawks, C, the Chargers, or D, the Giants? Patriots, Seahawks, Chargers, or Giants? Who won the 2007 Super Bowl?
I don't know.
Nope.
Let's see those answers. What do we got? Jacob said Pats. Allie said Giants. It was the Giants. The Giants toppled the Patriots. I think that might be the classic David Tyree catch, middle of the field.
How did I?
This actually, yeah, I think this might have been their undefeated season with Randy Moss, and then they lost in the Super Bowl.
I just thought the Patriots won 4 years.
They won early, like 01, 03, 04, and then they didn't win until 14, and then I think again in 16,
Yeah, I just
and then
guessed.
again in 19. This last year, yeah. So,
I just
Bummer.
guessed.
Allie, another point in our trivia game this evening. Jacob, down 3 points. You're going to have to figure it out soon.
I'll figure it out.
Alright, he's going to figure it out. Next question. How many holes does a complete golf round have? A, 18, B, 21, C, 9, or D, 12? How many holes does a complete golf round have? Alright, you guys look like quick. 18? 18 is correct. Jacob on the board.
I actually got one.
Yes, sir. After our first 2 categories, Allie is up 4 points to 1. I think we still have 2 categories left, so stay tuned to see how this shapes up. Welcome back to our Trivia Edition game tonight with Allie and Jacob. Allie is up 4 points to 1 over Jacob. We still got 2 categories left, so there's still time for a comeback. Will we see one? Let us know in the chat. All right, our first question of the science section is
Jake's
this.
not comfortable with this one.
I believe you got this.
I can do it.
Think smart.
Just guess. That's what I've been doing.
Question number 1 on the science section. Which planet is known as the red planet?
Oh,
Jupiter, Mercury, Earth, or Mars? Jupiter, Mercury, Earth,
You should
or
get this one.
Mars?
I didn't cheat, but you should get this one.
We got a cheating claim. I'll check the tapes. Let's see those answers. I got Mars. The answer is Mars. Wow. Good at y'all. I think that was an easier one, but hey,
Yeah.
credit. Give credit where credit's due. Good for you, JC. Alright, 5-2. Here we go. Question number 2. Which of the following is necessary for combustion? Burning. Is it A, nitrogen, B, oxygen, C, carbon, or D, gas? Which of the following is necessary for combustion? Like, you know, you're playing Trivia Cracker. I don't know this answer. You just gotta guess it. Maybe that's what you gotta do. A, nitrogen, B, oxygen, C, carbon, or D, gas? You guys ready?
I've been ready.
Okay. Let's see those answers. I got D, gas. It is actually oxygen.
Oxygen?
Cannot
It's carbon dioxide. Oxygen.
without
No, we need gas to like lighter.
I don't think that's how that works. Lighter fluid is not gas, it's liquid, no? Isn't it?
Oh, I thought you meant like car gas, like you.
It's a liquid, right?
Yeah.
What is the name for the transparent covering of the front of the eye? Transparent covering. You know what transparent means, Jacob? See through. Covering of the front of the eye. Let me hear for you. A, the cornea. B, the retina. C, eyelid. D, pupil. What is the name for the transparent covering of the front
What if we
of
don't know how to spell
the
it?
eye? It's okay.
Just put A, B, C, or D.
Yeah, A, cornea. B, retina. C, eyelid. D, pupil.
What would be?
Retina. R-E-T-I-N-A. Retina. Let's see those answers. B and A. The answer was A.
Redness inside the eye, along with the people on the island, is not transparent.
Yeah, that's why I thought I would.
Right. It's okay. It's okay. I think the score is up to 6-2 now.
have two.
With
Yeah, you too.
two. I think we're going into our last category here, the history section. There's actually only 3 questions, so there's not really any way you can win. But let's see if you can make it close, Jacob. Okay. All right. First question of the history section. What is the name of Prince William's son? A. Alexander. B. George. C. Charles. Or D. William.
Those are all kings, right?
What is the name of Prince William's son?
Throughout the years, yes.
I mean, they can come.
I already wrote my answer.
Oh my gosh. What are we gonna do? I believe. Oh, Charles? George? It was George. I'm so
I
sorry.
didn't actually know that one.
Jacob. Wow, she's out here guessing, right. It's okay.
You're trying. You're doing your best.
You're in your bed. Isn't this beat being at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. Doing the same thing, playing Minecraft. Ay, ay, ay. In Greek mythology, which goddess is Zeus's wife? Is it A. Hera, B. Persephone, C. Athena, or D. Aphrodite? In Greek mythology,
One that I-
which goddess is Zeus's wife? Hera, Persephone, Athena, or Aphrodite? Hera, and she put Athena, and it was Hera! Hey, on the board!
Yay, Jake!
Oh my Lantis! What is it?
7 to
7
3?
to 3.
No, it's like 7-6.
No.
7-3. 7-3.
You didn't get 3 points.
You might be able to see the
Extra.
score down here because I might be keeping track of it. So 7-3. Okay, hey,
Hey, I got it.
you got it, man. I'm proud. Which founding father was not a U.S. president? A. Thomas Jefferson. B. Samuel Adams. C. John Adams. Or D. George Washington. Which founding father was not a U.S. president? A. Thomas Jefferson. B. Samuel Adams. C. John Adams. Or D. George Washington.
You know it's not George Washington. So you can cancel that one. We just watched Hamilton, so which other was president?
Thomas Jefferson.
So it's not that one. Who else was president?
Samuel Adams.
Or John Adams.
Alright.
I think we've got narrowed it down to 2 answers. John Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams.
See, y'all.
It was John Adams and John Quincy Adams, so either way.
See, that's what I said, and you guys are like, are you sure?
Oh, ask you, we're sure.
It's like mind games. It's not fair.
No mind
There's
games.
no mind games. I literally helped you find the answer.
And you didn't take the help.
I did. I was actually going to put Thomas
Jake, you
Jefferson.
watched?
No, you were not.
I was.
Jacob.
Wow. Well, after a non-competitive trivia game, Allie wins 8-3. Allie, what do you have to say for yourself about trivia? Jacob, how hard was that on a scale of 1 to 10? Allie says it wasn't that hard. What do you think? On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was that?
Like 11.
11 out the roof.
I was gonna say like 3 or 4, so.
3 or
Yeah.
4.
All you have to do if you don't know, you just have to choose the one that you think it could be.
That's what I was doing.
Well, hey, thanks so much for playing. Thanks so much for watching. from wherever you're watching, on whatever device you're watching from. We have a great message planned for you tonight. So get your Bible if you got one, or get on another device if you're already on a different device. And you're going to be in Acts chapter 9. And we're going to be looking at Saul, who later becomes Paul, and his road trip that he takes to Damascus. I know that in this quarantine season that things have been a little different, especially during the summer. I'm sure that your vacations have changed. I know that I was supposed to go to Washington, D.C. with my parents. We're going to go to the Museum of the Bible that is out there. But, flights and things had changed, and we didn't feel so great about going on flights, and so we had to cancel that. So I know things have been a little weird, but I do know is that what I've been seeing some of you have been doing is that some of you have been taking road trips, which I think is great. I've been seeing some of you go to Zion or Yosemite or even just up the coast to go camping. And it's such a great way to, spend time with your family, but I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not a huge fan of the idea of road trips. Sitting in a car for 3, 5, 10 to 15 hours even sounds not that great. I have kind of a sort of bad motion sickness, and so unless I'm like the one driving the car, I have a hard time being just like a passenger in the car, as I normally kind of like get a headache or I feel sick. And so the idea, I think, of road trips do not impress me, and they don't hype me up. But I think that when I go on a road trip and when I come back and I reflect on our trip, that the road trip itself is actually one of my favorite parts of the trip. The journey to something, and then obviously the destination itself. And so I think upon reflection, I actually do like road trips a little more than maybe I did at the beginning. Well, like I said before, 2,000 years ago, Saul, who becomes Paul, right? He goes on his own kind of road trip, you might say. And so Saul, back in the day, he was a Jew, but Saul was the kind of Jew who was very religious, and he took his faith very seriously. And so he learned everything that he could learn. And so he really became an upright, very smart and eloquent Jewish leader. And at the time, there were Jews who did not like and agree with what the Christians of that day and age were doing. Because the Jews at that time did not believe that the one who claimed to be the Son of God, Jesus, they didn't believe that he actually was the Messiah. And so because they saw these Christians, they worshipped him, and after Jesus had, died and rose again and ascended into heaven, the Jewish leaders thought that that was not true. They thought that they were actually like defaming the name of God. And so Saul set out his whole life, his mission, to persecute, jail, and kill anyone who followed Jesus. I think it's right here in verse 1, Acts chapter 9, verse 1, and then also in verse 2. It says that Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. Right, so he was uttering threats and every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. So he wanted to persecute, he wanted to imprison, and he wanted to kill anyone who was following Jesus. And he goes on to say this. It says, he went to the high priest, he requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus, asking for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way, Jesus, that he had found there. And so you could kind of call them movements, right? That you had this Jesus movement, the way, that's what they called them, right? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so there were Christians that were following the way, this Jesus movement. And then Saul at the time, right, had kind of made his own end it movement. He wanted to end the Jesus, the way movement. And so he set it out as his whole mission to go to this place called Damascus, and he was going to persecute, imprison, and kill the Christians that were living there. Right? Man, that is drama at its finest. And you see that the thing is that the people actually knew about Saul. because Saul had been doing this. And so people were kind of afraid of Saul. And what they didn't know at the time is that Saul was coming to their land. And so he set out on his own road trip, you could say. He was going to go road trip from Jerusalem to Damascus. I looked it up, thank goodness for technology, that it would take about 60 hours to walk from Jerusalem to Damascus. And you gotta think, a couple thousand years ago, they didn't have cars. Today, it would only take you like 4.5, 5 hours to drive from Jerusalem to Damascus, which is kind of like driving from here to San Francisco, right? Traffic on the Grapevine, give or take. But it would only take 4.5, 5 hours to drive from Jerusalem to Damascus, but there was no car. So Saul, he was walking. He was walking from Jerusalem to Damascus, and it would probably take him like 8 to 10 days to walk. And so he sets out on this road trip with his feet to go from Jerusalem to Damascus. And so we find ourselves in Acts chapter 9, verse 3 through 5, that says this: when he was going on his long trip by foot, it says this. It says, as he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? He said, who are you, Lord? Saul asked. And the voice replied, I am Jesus, the one who you are persecuting. So this is like crazy, right? That it says that he was as he nearly approached Damascus. So he was probably like 8.5 days in, and maybe he had like a half a day left, at 1.5 days in, and this whole, trip that he's on, he's thinking, I'm going to go to this city of Damascus, and I'm going to imprison and persecute, I'm going to kill people who are following Jesus. And just as he's about to get there, he meets Jesus. But before he even knows it's Jesus, he actually calls Jesus, the one who he didn't believe in, he calls him Lord. And I think what's even cooler about that is that when Jesus comes to Saul, he calls him by name. And when Jesus calls Saul by name, he grabs Saul's attention. That's pretty crazy, right? Like he calls him by name, and it makes sense, right? If you were walking down the street, if you were in a restaurant, if you were in class, if you were at the mall, and somebody called your name, your head would probably swivel, right? If they're, hey, Saquon, I'd probably look around, especially when I know that nobody else has got the name Saquon, right? So if I hear the name Saquon, right, my head is on a swivel. And so Jesus, he calls Saul's name, and he grabs Saul's attention. And right, I think in this instance, right, it was like, it says, right, a bright light had shone down around him, calls his name, grabs his attention, and then Jesus does this incredible thing by letting Saul know that he is Jesus, right? Jesus, he says, he reveals himself to Saul. So that without a shadow of a doubt, Saul knows exactly who's talking to him, who is calling his name. Right, Saul was on this road trip to Damascus, and Jesus meets him where he's at. And he grabs Saul's attention. Think about the things that have happened since March. No matter what it is, right? Think about all the things that have happened. Whether it's the quarantine and things closing, maybe it's your schools closing, your sports closing, the protests that have happened nationwide, the uptick in cases, things opening and then having to close again, right? So much has happened since March. And a lot of it might be confusing and frustrating and upsetting. And there's a lot of information out there. Maybe you just don't know exactly what to believe. But what I think is really important for us to think about in this season is, if God is in control, is he trying to get your attention? Because I think that right, if the Lord is everywhere, if the Lord is in control, if God is the one who created the sun and the moon and the stars and the earth, and he's the one who reigns supreme over everything, and he's in control of the situations that happen, don't you think that maybe God is trying to get your attention? That so many of us have this opportunity, really, to stop and pause and slow down. You and I are often so consumed with the busyness of this life and all the things that we have to try to do and accomplish. But in this season, that even sometimes when we think that, oh, things are going to go back to normal soon, or maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe next month, they don't. And it's like this quarantine season continues to go on and on and on. And I'm for sure, for many of you, myself included, that you have grown weary at times. Maybe you've grown burnt out at times. But what I think is true, that even in the midst of all those valid feelings that we have, that the Lord is trying to get your attention. I think that he is trying to speak up in different ways. He's trying to showcase and he's trying to display himself even in the midst of the chaos. And he is trying to grab yours and eyes. He's trying to grab our attention. And so I think that there's some questions that we should start to ask, because if you go on and read in Acts 9, and you read about Saul's kind of his journey, the rest of his journey, in Acts 9, 8 through 9, it says, Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by hand to Damascus. He remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. It goes on to say in Acts 9, 13 through 14, but Lord, exclaimed Ananias. And Ananias was the guy that Saul was actually supposed to go to get his eyes from no longer being blind, right? It says he had like this fish-like scales on his eyes, and that Ananias, this Christian, who Saul was actually going on this journey to kill and persecute, was going to be the one to uncover the scales and make him able to see again. Right, and so Ananias says, I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to believers in Jerusalem, and he is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name. And Jesus told Ananias, go, for Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings, as well as to the people of Israel. So Ananias went and found Saul. He laid his hands on him and said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me so that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Instantly, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized. Right, so Ananias, who was afraid of Saul because of the things that he had heard about him, was the one who was supposed to help him regain his sight. And instantly after Saul had become and regained his sight, he was no longer blind, he got baptized and was saved and became a follower of Jesus. That in all of this, Jesus was grabbing Saul's attention. He was calling him by name. He was sending him people to help him. Right? He was putting people in Saul's life that were going to help him follow Jesus better. Right? That he gave him an action step in getting baptized. That Jesus was really getting Saul's attention. And I think that the Lord is trying to get your attention in this season. And so a couple of questions that come to my mind that I would love for you to start to think about is that if Jesus is trying to get your attention in this season, right, when we have a lot of time on our hands, time to spend with him, time to think about the things that he might be doing. Question one is, have you been paying attention to Jesus? In this quarantine season, when you have all this downtime, when you have a lot more free time, and I know you, I've talked with many of you. You guys aren't doing that much. Some of you, like I said, are taking road trips, or doing this and the other, or maybe working out. But we have a lot of time on our hands. So the question I want you to ask yourselves is, have you been paying attention to Jesus? Have you been paying attention to what he might be calling you to do in this season? What he might be trying to say to you in this season? And that's the next question. Number 2 is, what then, if you want to ask yourself, hey, have I been paying attention to Jesus? If you haven't, then you got to ask yourself, why not? But if you have been paying attention to him, ask yourself, what do you feel like he's saying? What do you feel like he's been saying to you lately? Right, because he's trying to grab your attention amidst the chaos. He's given us all really these great opportunities to grow closer to him, to grow in our knowledge and wisdom and love for him. What has Jesus been trying to say to you? Maybe he wants you to hear that you are loved. Maybe he wants you to hear that your worth isn't determined by the number of followers you have on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, how many friends you have on Snapchat, what your Snapchat score is. Maybe he wants you to know that your worth isn't found in the number of likes your last post got or how many views your video got. Your worth is determined by what Jesus says about you. But in order for you to hear that, you have to pay attention to him. You have to hear what he has to say. In order for us to really understand what our worth is, we have to understand that when Jesus speaks, if we don't listen, if we don't hear him, then we won't get to know what he has to say about us. He's calling you and I to pay attention to him because I think that he's trying to say something. I think that he's inviting you to something, into a deeper relationship with him. You know, anytime I think about Jesus' invitation, right? Jesus has given everybody and everyone an invitation to come and to know him, right? And so if Jesus was going to invite you and I to his house for dinner, I promise you that if we got to his house, he wouldn't be like, wow, I forgot to set the table, or, oh man, I didn't make any food. That, I mean, if we were to show up at Jesus' house for dinner, everything would be prepared for us. And I think that in this season, in terms of what he's calling you to, in terms of him trying to grab your attention, he's inviting you to something that he's prepared for you. For me. And I think it's this invitation to dive deeper into who he is. For some of you, maybe for the very first time. And the last question that I want you to ask yourself is, do you need to change direction? And only you know the answer to this question. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be starting this series, kind of talking a little deeper about this topic of our direction and in terms of what it looks like to really follow Jesus. And you can fool your parents, you can fool your teachers, you could fool me. But only you know the true direction in how you're trying to live your life. Only you know the true priorities that you have in your heart. Are you becoming the kind of person you always wanted to become, or have you settled for less and made compromises along the way? What direction are you heading today? And are you paying attention to Jesus and what he has to say? I will offer you just one possible direction. And I think I say possible not because I have specifics, but I do have like a specific thing that the Lord has said, but I don't have specifics on what that looks like. But I know that the Lord has called you and I in this quarantine season, just like he does in any season at all, to love others well. He's called you and I to love others well. That even though you and I don't have the same opportunities to love people the way that maybe we have in the past, we're kind of saying no thanks on handshakes and hugs, it doesn't mean that we can't love people. I've had the great opportunity to, as I think about the last, 14, 15 weeks, I've had the opportunity to deliver or to take or to buy so many pizzas for many of you. Tacos, gift cards, ways that, I thought, I can love you all in this season. Some of you, I've gone to your house and we've just kind of had lunch in your front yard. Or we just talked for a couple hours. There's ways in which I wish that I could, be loving you guys here at church and putting on great activities and fun games and, doing in-person messages and, having you be in small groups with your leaders. But there's a lot of things that we can't do, but that doesn't mean that we can't do anything. If anything, God is calling us to get maybe a little more creative and a little more intentional about how we can love people in this time. How we can serve others in this season. How we can truly love our neighbor. People talk a lot about, hey, wearing a mask is loving your neighbor. And it's super true. And I don't have a but in terms of that. I just think that there's also other ways that we can love our neighbor. If we're just wearing our mask, that's great. But man, I think, are we encouraging people in this season? Are we opening up about the things going on in our heart in this season with others? Are we letting people know that we're praying for them? Are we asking people what we can be praying for them? Are we finding ways to stay in touch with our friends, even the ones that aren't even in our immediate circle? Right, I think that in this season, right, that God is trying to grab your attention, and one way in which he might be trying to grab your attention is by calling you to serve, by calling you to love him and to love others well. I hope that in the same way that Jesus got Saul's attention by calling him by name, that you would know that Jesus is calling you by name in this season, and that he wants to be here with you. So may you step into that relationship with him. May you just give yourself to Jesus in this season. And I'm telling you, in the same way that Saul's road trip changed his life forever, that when we dive deep into Jesus, even more and more, maybe even for the first time, that our lives will be transformed forever as well.
Hey guys, it's our favorite segment, Pizza Time with Victor. Once again, as a friendly reminder, nothing in a pro, bro. I hope you guys had a wonderful 4th of July. Did some all legal fireworks and were responsible and threw away all your trash and all that good stuff. Yeah, hope you guys had a blast, literally. Let's get started, yeah? Oh, baby. Oh. Let's see who gets it. Survey says Kayla Jackson. Congratulations. You win. We'll be getting your info. We'll send you a pizza over. All right? Have a good one.